Maruti Suzuki Wagon-R has just been launched in an all-new avatar. The third generation car now uses the hard-tech platform just like the Swift, which makes it bigger, more dynamic and safer too. Moving the Wagon-R into the modern era and yet allowing it to retain its brand strengths was Maruti's primary motive to design an India-specific bigger Wagon-R. But that was also almost exactly what a certain other player had in mind too, isn't it?
Now, when the Wagon-R nameplate first arrived in India, this is way back in December 1999. At that particular point, this was the car that Maruti was sort of taking a bit of a gamble with. It was the tall boy. It was coming at a time when another car had become the benchmark for tall boys. I am, of course, talking about the first generation of the Hyundai Santro. Now, isn't it interesting that the third generation of this car comes to us at a time when we have a brand new Santro also in the market? And so, of course, we have to pit them against each other.
Sure, there was a time when the Santro really took on the Zen because the Wagon-R in its first generation was not initially a massive success. But the two tall boys quickly squared up as adversaries soon after. And isn't it interesting how today's new age Santro is a not so tall boy?
Both iconic nameplates, and yet from the very first cars we got to now, they both moved on big time. Yes, these are much more modern, better built, better equipped cars that drive a lot better too. But styling wise, I have to say both of them, well, they're sort of backward looking in a way. And with the Wagon-R, it's intentional. It's trying to look like a Wagon-R. With the Santro, you have to ask the question why.
After Hyundai's recent design successes, the Santro's looks have been underwhelming. The Wagon-R, on the other hand, builds on the car's boxy square appeal and takes it into a modern interpretation for the first time. The muscle is not forced, with the lines all working. The same is true for the face and tail. On the Santro, the lines and the metal appear forced and the lights are, well, boring.
So let me talk about the Wagon-R first. Now, like I said, it's trying to be the tall boy. It wants to maintain, like you look at it and you know it's a Wagon-R. I have to say it's a good interpretation of that. I know many of you on social media have been giving me this feedback saying, it looks like a box. Well, you know what? In a way, it's supposed to, and yet it has those modern elements. I like what's been done in the face, a little bit of a detail on the headlamp, and then of course all the sculpting in the metal along the side. The rear of the car also is certainly just much nicer looking. It's wider. It still has that nice tall vertical stack on the tail light. It all works. On the Santro, yes, there are a few bits that are nice and modern. You do have the cascade grille in the front and, well, very European looks. But given what Hyundai has been doing of late, I know I've already said this, so I won't take too much time saying it again. I just expected this car to be drop dead gorgeous, which it wasn't. Now, you again do have a lot of sculpting in the metal on this too, but it's a bit questionable as to why it's really there. I know it's not been appreciated too much, but in terms of proportion, here's the interesting thing. That car certainly looks nice and tall, but the Santro, when you put them next to each other, really looks nice and wide.
Hyundai's played it smart with the Santro by bringing in a powerful petrol engine. It gets a 1.1-litre petrol motor, which is good enough for 68 brake horsepower, and the torque figure stands at 99 Nm. There's also CNG on offer, and that sees power drop slightly at 59 bhp, but still good enough for a car this size. Maruti is big on options though. There are two petrol engines on offer, the 1-litre and a more powerful 1.2. There is no CNG yet, but Maruti promises there's one in the pipeline. The 1-litre produces 67 bhp and the 1.2 has a much higher 82 bhp. The larger engine has more power and is the familiar K12 series from some of the other Marutis we know, but it's been tuned more for efficiency. With the two petrol engines, Maruti certainly gives customers quite a choice as per their preference. Now there's more choice in transmission options too, as both engines get the 5-speed manual and a 5-speed AMT. The Santro also gets the option of a 5-speed manual or AMT, but the CNG does not have the AMT. In terms of fuel efficiency, the Wagon-R has the upper hand as both the engines are more fuel efficient than the one in the Santro, 21.5 kilometers per litre and 22.5 compared to 20.3 on the Santro. On to the drive next. Now we want to really test the cars with their combined USPs at the fore, and which is why both our rivals here sport AMT gearboxes. So while the Wagon-R is in its highest trim, the ZXi, the Santro has the Sports, that's one below the highest, which is as high as you can go with the AMT. So then, first up, the newer car.
The stance of the car is impressive, the seating position, the nice view of the road. This is something that a lot of people are going to appreciate about the Wagon-R. First, it'll impress you with the way you can get in and get out easily, and then it's the fact that on the road too, you get a good sense of control. Now, having said that, of course, you have to also acknowledge the fact that all Maruti cars of late have just been leaps ahead of some of their previous generation versions. By that, of course, I am hinting at not just performance, it's not just the engine performance or the gearbox or the AMTs, but more importantly, it's got to do with just the overall build quality. I mean, these cars, they certainly handle a lot better because they are built a lot stiffer now.
That said, the steering still lacks feel, as I've said in my review, and the new 1.2-litre K12 engine has limited punch. Now, the Santro.
Now straight away, it's a huge difference. The character of both the cars is immensely different from each other. While on the Wagon-R, you have a sense of that slight, exaggerated, almost commanding height. Here you don't get that, but you get a sense of the width, and so it's a lot more comfortable to drive. It has a bigger car feel for sure, and the ride quality really on this car, I think, is something that Hyundai has cracked, and it feels therefore very comfortable. Also very nice, the AMT. The performance of that cannot be dismissed because of course it's an AMT at the back of your mind, but it is the smoothest AMT on the block. Certainly bodes well when you think about Hyundai's upcoming products like the QXi or Stix, its subcompact SUV.
So while the Wagon-R scored on looks, the Santro takes it on performance. On the inside, the cabins are similar in color palette and equipment. Both cars have multifunctional touch screens, but the Santro has power window controls up front placed under the gear shift, and that's a bit weird. Its screen is good, but the Wagon-R debuts Maruti Suzuki's brand new Smart Play Studio interface that's more advanced. You can marry in 3 devices at a time, use its own navigation, and also still get the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto-like functions. Plus, the freshness of the cabin is more evident, even though Hyundai is better on plastic quality on the Santro. The sense of space the Wagon-R has and conveys is also miles ahead of the Santro. The latter's seat at the back is wider, but the headroom and legroom on the Wagon-R is undeniably bigger. Both cars get decent safety equipment, but the Wagon-R has dual airbags as optional on every variant, while driver side is standard. Rear parking sensors and central locking are standard across the range. The top trim ZXi option is also available on the AMT, like I said. On the Santro, that's limited to the Magna and Sports variants. Now this is a sore thumb for the Santro for sure on both counts, where you can only get the dual airbags and parking sensors on the top Asta trim, and that's a manual. Driver airbags and ABS are of course standard across variants. And that is why the prices are not an accurate reflection of what you really get for that money. The Wagon-R's lowest spec is the 1 litre, and it starts at 4,19,000 rupees for the LXi. That goes all the way up to 4,69,000 rupees, and the AMT with the 1 litre costs 5,16,000 rupees. The more powerful version starts at 4,89,000 rupees and goes all the way up to 5,69,000 rupees. The Santro holds an advantage here because it undercuts the Wagon R by a little more than 30,000 rupees on the base variant. With 5 variants on offer, prices for the Santro start at 3,89,000 rupees, going all the way up to 5,64,000 rupees. The AMT variants of the Santro are priced between 5,18,000 and 5,46,000 rupees. So remember, there's no top trim AMT.
So it's interesting how the two cars match up. I mean, on some things you've got the Santro that goes ahead, on some it's the Wagon R. And let's just get down to brass tacks. Now, when it comes to ride quality and the quality of the AMT per se, yes, it's the Santro. There is absolutely no dispute on that. It's also very good value, especially for some of the starting prices. But let's be pragmatic, who really buys the base version anymore? Not too many people, and which is why it's not as if the Wagon R has much higher prices. Frankly, on value, I think the two cars are reasonably evenly matched. And so, with its better looks, better appointed cabin, better features, and certainly much nicer standard safety equipment, the Wagon R takes this one. And isn't it surprising? Because in the past, when these two cars were head-to-head several years ago, it was always the Santro, but now Maruti has got it right.